Welcome to part 2 of your third lesson in web design. In this video, we're going to focus on adding the CSS to the web page that we built from part 1. So where we left off, the web page looked like this. It was just plain black and white text. There were some buttons at the top, a couple of headings, and a bunch of tables that stacked one on top of the other. But eventually, by the end of the video, we want it to look like this, where we have a menu bar across the top. We've got these buttons that now look a little different, and we are going to put the main heading over here in the top right corner. We're also going to have a Go Cavs heading in the middle of the page, and of course, instead of having those tables stack up, we're going to have them appear whenever we click one of these buttons and have the other two tables disappear. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Let's go ahead and get started. This is the HTML page that we left off with in part 1. And I just want to highlight two main things from the HTML that we're going to be really emphasizing in the CSS. And that is how we divided our page. So we divided our page into the menu bar at the top, and we did that in the HTML using the div tag right here. That's the opening div tag that we've given an ID of menu bar for. So all of the content that we put inside of that, the buttons and the H1, we will refer to in the CSS as menu bar. So that is this section. Underneath that is the page content div tag. So this div tag contains the H2, which says Go Cavs, and the three tables that we made. Now I shrunk down the tables so they would fit in this video, and we could just see that this section is containing them. So now let's go ahead and start making the CSS. In part 1, you should have made the lesson3.css file. So I'm going to just double click that. If you still need to do that, you can go up here and click New File and make it. The first thing I'm going to put at the top of my page is my color scheme. And I've already looked up the values for the Cleveland Cavaliers, so they have a color scheme of wine, gold, and navy. And those color codes that we're going to need to reference, I've put right in here. And each one also has an equivalent RGB value. So really these things are the same thing. This is the hexadecimal value for wine, and this is the hexadecimal value for gold, and this one is the hexadecimal value for navy. And basically over here is the same thing written as an RGB. So that's red, green, and blue. And basically this number here is 0, corresponds with the first two digits in here. 45 is just 2D, and 98 is 62. And it's just two different numbering systems for how these colors are supposed to look. Now, if you wanted to get your own colors, I have on our web page a link to this color picker, which I find to be extremely useful. So over on Schoology under Web Design Tools, there's this link for color picker. Just click that, you'll come to here, and here's all of the standard colors that you can click on, and then you'll see a preview in this box against dark color text and light color text. And over here you can get different shades of colors. So I can take that color that I had in here and find different shades, and right next to it is the hexadecimal value, and over here is the RGB value, and you're going to want both of those to be noted in your page. And it's useful to have RGB because sometimes if you want it to be transparent on top of it, you can add a little letter A next to the B here and say RGBA, and then put a transparency value as your fourth number. Over here, you could look up a specific color. For instance, this is the gold color for the Cavs. If I load that in, this is the gold color preview. And if I wanted a different shade, I could just kind of look through here, and this goes by 5% intervals. So maybe I want 75% instead of 50. And I would just take this value and substitute it in the web page. All right, so that's a color picker, and again, you can get to it from our Schoology page right there. Let's go ahead and make our first rule now. So our first rule, I'm going to apply to the overall page. So I want just a set of rules that apply to everything. And the root of your web page is called the HTML element, but I also want it to apply to my body element. So basically the displayed part of the page here. The first thing I'm going to set is the font of the page. So I'm going to say font family. And when I type that out, it's going to give me all kinds of different fonts that are available for this system. But what I'm going to pick here is a web safe font. And what that means is that just about all devices are able to have the fonts that I'm picking out, whether it's a Windows desktop, a Mac, a iPhone, a Google Nexus tablet. They're all pretty much going to have these three that I'm going to select. So I'm going to select Arial, Helvetica, and Sans Serif. And basically what that means is these are going to be fonts that are easy to read on a digital display, and they're not going to look like they came off of a old printing press or something like that. So they're going to be more like a block letter. Okay, next up, I'm going to set the margin of the page to be 0, the padding of the page to be 0, and the height of the page to be 100%. All right, so these are all page level values that are kind of standard in some of these projects that we use. In particular, the reason why I have these two grouped together is because I want them to stretch all the way to the bottom of the browser with this height of 100%. And that'll be important for when we put the background into the page. So this will serve as an overall container that always stretches to be the full height of the browser. Okay, next up, we want to start creating our menu bar at the top of the page. Before we continue, let's look at the HTML and review the menu bar section. So we have a div tag that we give an ID of menu bar to. So this begins here and ends here. And by referring to menu bar in the CSS, we're telling the browser just style this section with the rules that we state. And within it, we've got 3 buttons. They each have an ID of their own, and we have an H1. All right, so let's go ahead and make rules for that. All right, so we begin by saying pound menu bar, and you can start to see it pop up here. And when we add the curly braces, that's the beginning and ending of the style for menu bar. And basically what we want is we want to position it so it's always fixed to the top of the screen. How do we do that? Well, it's pretty much exactly what I said. I'm going to say position is fixed. And that means even when I'm scrolling the page, I always want the menu bar to stay at the top. Now the other sections can move with the scrolling, but this menu bar is always going to stay in the same place. And where am I going to put it? Well, I can specify how far from the top, the left, the right, even the bottom that I want the menu bar. In this case, all I have to do is specify 2 of those. I'm going to say the distance from the top is going to be 0, and the distance from the left is also going to be 0. And that's going to always basically affix menu bar to the top left corner. Now, it's going to be as wide as however many elements are in it and how wide the browser is. So we're going to say that I want the width of it to continue to stretch 100% wide of the viewing area. So if the browser is a different size or is expanded or contracted, it's always going to stretch to be 100% wide. And then the height of it is going to be only 55 pixels tall, or 50 pixels tall is what I'm going to make it. And now we have to give it a background color. Otherwise, it's just, right now it's going to be black on black. So I'm going to say background color. And for now, let's go ahead and use one of these color codes up here just so we can see something different. So let's go ahead and just make it a navy background for now. We'll change this to white later on. But for now, it's going to be navy. And let's go ahead and click Save. And this is not going to be previewing very well in Aptana. Let's see it in a real browser. Let me go ahead and push play. Or actually, I have to click on the HTML page and push play. And here is our blue bar across the top. And here is our buttons. So far, so good. That's what we've done up to this point. Let's go ahead and keep going. Okay, so within that menu bar, let's go ahead and give the buttons a different look. So I'm going to say menu bar, and this basically says within the menu bar section, find any button element. All right, and then I'm going to have a beginning and end to this rule. And the first thing I'm going to do is, if we look at these buttons on this page, they actually have a very, very thin border, maybe 1 pixel. We're going to turn off that border. So the first thing I'm going to say is border 0 pixels, px. And let's change the background color of them. So the background color is going to be gold. And I have that up here, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this right there. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, and I'm going to refresh this page right here, and here we can see we changed them to gold buttons. Okay, now we'll go back to our rule, and now I'm going to give them a shadow. Now I want the buttons to kind of stand out as if they're 3-dimensional, so I'm going to give them a shadow. And the way that I can do that is I'm going to give them a box shadow. So this would apply to their entire container. And basically the box shadow works as like this. How far to the right or left do we want to shift? And I can give it a negative value or a positive value. So this is left or right. So I'm going to say 2 pixels in the positive direction, which is to the right. And then up or down would be the next value. So to go down, I'm going to say another 2 pixels. So this is now shifting the box to the right 2 pixels and down 2 pixels. And then how much blur do I want in the shadow? I'm going to also say 2 pixels. That's the third value. And finally, what color do I want the shadow to be? Now in this case, I'm going to give it the navy value. Now this is going to be navy on navy right now, so I'm going to go back and change this to basically being a white background. So to do that, I'm going to say FF. And that's the color code for white. So let me go ahead and preview my page again. And now you can start to see I basically turned my menu bar section to the white background, and these buttons now appear to have a shadow, and they look a little bit more 3-dimensional. They pop out in the page. Another thing I'm going to want to do now is increase the font size of these because they're a little small for me, and I also want to push them down a little bit. So let's do that. Let's go back to our rules, and I'm going to say the font size is going to be 1.25 ems. Now that's a unit of measure in computers that basically means that whatever settings they have in the browser, I want to be 1.25% of that. So that's like 125%. Okay, and the next thing is margin. I wanted to push that down. So the margin works like this. It works like a clock dial. So the first value would be like 12 o'clock on a analog clock, and then to the right is the next value. The third value would be like looking at like 6 o'clock on an analog clock, and the final value would be 9 o'clock or to the left. So when you think of these values, just think top, right, bottom, left. It goes around in a circle clockwise. So we're going to say 10 pixels from the top, 0 from the right, 0 from the bottom, and 10 pixels from the left. And that's basically going to push these things over. So let's go ahead and save this and see what we did. I'm going to refresh this page, and here you can see them pop down and they got bigger. So that's a lot easier to read here. All right. Now also, you don't see any a button press effect out of these. We're going to add that here next. So to do that, that's the active state of the button. So here I'm going to say the menu bar button again, and I'm going to say the button when it's active. All right, active is when we are actually clicking it. And I'm going to change basically the color to one of our other color scheme colors. So background color is going to be, and let's use this one right here, the top one. All right, so it'll be that one from our color scheme. And the text color is going to need to be gold, so it's not the same. All right, so let's go ahead and try it now. I'm going to save this and refresh it in the browser. And when I click these, you can see it changes to the wine and gold instead of the gold and black. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to close a couple of these tabs. All right, and as we continue to build this, now let's put that H1 from our web page, the one that says fan site. Let's position this up in the upper right-hand corner, very much in the same way that we did the menu bar. So up here we said position fixed, 0 from the top and 0 from the left. Well, for that H1, let's do pretty much the same thing. We're going to say in the menu bar, find the H1. And I'm going to position this in a fixed manner to the top, but I don't want it all the way up in the right-hand corner. Otherwise, it's going to be right up against the edge. So instead, I'm going to push it off the top by about 5 pixels. And the distance from the right side is going to be 10 pixels. All right, and that'll give it just enough to look like it's not crammed in the corner. And I'm going to say its margin is 0. I'm going to give it a color, and let's do gold just so it matches. And let's give it a shadow so it also kind of looks like it's floating above the page. So to give a text shadow, you would say text-shadow, not a box shadow like we just did. So this one works the same way. This is how much shift we want to go left or right. In this case, any positive number would shift it to the right. Any positive number would shift it down. And then how much blur. And I'm just going to be consistent. 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels. And then what color we want to use goes next. So in this case, what we're going to use is that navy color. So I'm going to copy this and put that right there with a semicolon at the end. All right, let's go ahead and save this and take another look at it, what we have here. Oh, that's the wrong page. That's what we want to end up with. So let me go ahead and go over here and push play. Okay, there it is. So here I pushed it away from the edge on the right and down from the top a little bit, and now it's positioned just right. It's not crammed in the corner, and it has the shadow effect as well. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and start styling the page content. When we look at this page content section down here, it looks like we have everything, but we really don't. We're missing the Go Cavs H2, our second heading. And what's happened is it's actually slipped behind the menu bar. We've made the menu bar fix itself to the top of the page, and the rest of the content has slid behind it. So it's being hidden at the moment, and we're going to fix that in our next CSS rule set. So let's go ahead and take a look at the HTML. We are basically focusing in on this section. So this div tag has an ID of page content, and we're going to style that H2 that's supposed to say Go Cavs and these 3 tables. So let's go ahead and do that. Over here, what we're going to say first is page content. So this is the page content rule section, and the first thing that we want to do is position this. So I want this always to be in the same place. So it's going to be in a fixed position. And where do I want to put this? Well, I have to recall that I made the menu bar start at the top, so its distance from the top edge was 0, and it stretched to 50 pixels. So its height was 50. So after that is where I want to have the page content. So the top of the page content is going to start at 50 pixels. So if I save this now and I go back and I refresh this page, I should see the Go Calves get pushed down and begin being displayed at 50 pixels. And when I click refresh, it pops in. Okay, so that's what we've done with the page content section. So let's go ahead and keep going. Now we want the width of page content to be 100%. So it will stretch as wide as the browser is, and we want the height of it to continue to the bottom of the page. And that way we can put in the background image, which is what we're going to do next. So here we're going to say the background image is going to be located at, which is its URL, a folder called images and background.jpg. And we'll import that in just a moment. But let's go ahead and put these rules in first. All right, the next thing is I'm going to say that background image, I want its size to cover the entire page. So cover is just a little rule that says make it as wide as the browser is and as tall as the browser is. And the background repeat, I don't want this background to repeat. So I'm going to say background repeat, no repeat. And the text color of the page, let's make this white by default because that'll show up better than dark text. All right, so let me go ahead and save this right now. And now we need to get the images that will be displayed in this page. These images are saved on Schoology, so let's go there and open up your Lesson 3 folder. Scroll to the bottom, and you should see background, Calves 1, Calves 2, and Calves 3. Click on each of the pictures, and in the bottom left corner it says Download Image. Go ahead and do that. It's going to go to your Downloads folder. So I'm going to click one at a time until I have all 4 of these. Okay, now I have those 4 downloaded. I'm just going to shrink that down, open up my Downloads folder. These are my images, and I can import them into my project, but I'm going to make a folder just for my images. So I'm going to click on this shortcut button, select Folder, and I'm going to name it Images and click Finish. Now I can just drag and drop all of these. I've selected them, and I'm going to drag and drop them into my Images folder, and I'm going to select Copy. All right, so now I have these images, and let's go ahead and preview our site. All right, so let's go ahead and push play, and now we can see that we have a background. But as you can see, a couple things we have to fix. This text here, although we can kind of make it out, it doesn't display very well, so we want to put it on a darker background, which is what we're going to do with the tables. All right, so our page is starting to take some shape here. Let me go ahead and shrink that down, and we'll add the last part of our styles. I'm going to add a few extra lines of white space here. And next, let's go ahead and move that Go Calves, which is our page title, to the middle. So just to point this out, we have this page title here, ID. So if I said that I want the page title ID to have these rules, the very first thing I'm going to say is text align center. And another thing is I don't want it right on the top edge of this section. I actually want it down a little bit. So I'm going to say margin top. So this is the distance from the top, is going to be about 2%. And I'm going to use a percentage here so that it kind of scales with the browser a little bit. All right, and the font size that I want is going to be large. So I want font size is going to be 6M. So that's about 6 times the regular size. And the color that we'll use is the gold color. And since we have that background image, I want to give it a nice text shadow that will make it stand apart from the crowd in our background. So I'm going to say text shadow. And in this case, I want it to be 5 pixels to the right and 5 pixels down and 5 pixels of blur. And the color that I'm going to choose, let me copy this from above, is going to be that navy color. All right, so we're going to put that dark navy behind the gold. All right, let's save this and take a look at how it looks. All right, so here is the how it looked before. Let's go ahead and look at it now. So now it pops. All right, so that one really kind of jumps out of the page. We could even later on add a background behind that too if we wanted, but let's just keep going and finish out this page first. All right, so let's style these tables so that they all will have that same background and same positioning. So let me go ahead and shrink that down. And I can do all 3 tables the same just by separating them by commas. So the table IDs were record table, roster table, and slideshow table. So to write out these rules, I'm going to say roster TBL, comma, slideshow table, comma, and record table, comma. All right, so that means that all 3 of these are going to have the same set of rules applied to them. The first thing is I want them positioned absolutely. All right, what that means is that they will stay where we specify we want them to stay, but they will also scroll with the page. So that's different from fixed. Fixed means even, I want it to always be there even when the page scrolls. Absolute will put that element somewhere in the page, but it's going to scroll with the page scrolling. So I want it at about 20% from the top. And I want it about 12.5% from the left. And the width for these, 75% is about right. And we're going to say its border is going to be 0 pixels. So we're basically taking away the border. I'm going to add some more white space here just to move it up a little bit. And the spacing between borders, we're going to set to 0 pixels. And I also want to make the corners of the table round. So I can do that by saying border radius. And I'm going to set that to be 20 pixels. So it gives a nice little curved corner to each of the tables. And the background color that I've chosen is going to be that blue color. However, let's also make it a little bit transparent. So we're going to use the RGB. That's the red, green, and blue, but we're also going to add A. A is for alpha, and alpha means how transparent it's going to be. So next, let's go ahead and get that from above. We're using this navy color. So basically, we want these 3 values right there. So I'm going to paste that in here. And then the transparency is on a scale of 0 to 1. So any fraction of that is how transparent it's going to be. Think of it as like a percentage. So I'm going to say 0.75. And then I'm going to save it. All right, so let's see how they look. I'm going to go to my HTML, preview it, And here I've put them all in the same position. Notice if I change the page like this, the percentages that I use keeps the page scaling the same. All three tables are now stacked in the same position. Okay, let's go ahead and close that. So we're getting closer here. And next up, we want the individual parts of the tables to take on different values. We want the headings to be centered. We want the headings to be that wine color that the calves use. So let's go ahead and use that. I'm going to say TH. All right, so any TH on the page, that's the table headings, they're all going to basically receive these rules. First of all, let's align the text to the center. And the background color is going to be 860038. And the text color is going to be, and I'm just going to copy this from up above, it's this one right here, the gold color. And let's just make the font size of the heading columns a little bit bigger, so that's going to be 1.1 em. I also think they should be bold, so that's called font weight. And I'm going to say bold. All right, so that's going to make them a little bit thicker. All right, next up, I also want the table heading and the table data columns, those are the individual cells, to have a padding. And that padding is going to be set to 8 pixels. I had to experiment with that number to find just the right size. So that's just how much room and space there is around each one of the table cells. And let's go ahead and align the text to the middle. So I'm going to say text align is center. Okay, so let's go ahead and save it at that point and preview it. All right, so here you can start to see things come into position. Now they're still stacked on top of one another. We'll fix that momentarily, but it really does kind of look like it's falling into place. All right, so let's go back to our rules and we'll just add the last couple. All right, so finally the pick, all right, in the page. We're going to specify that its width is going to be 315 pixels and its height is going to be 210 pixels. Now the 3 pictures that I'm going to put in that are actually twice that size, so that's basically the size of those pictures divided by 2. And we're going to add a zoom image later on, so I'm going to add the rule for it right now and set its width to 100%. And this is when we click on a picture, we want it to zoom full screen. So we're going to basically change it from the 315 pixel version to the full size version. So that's what that's going to do. This element doesn't exist in the page, so we can just put that rule in and it's going to get ignored for now. All right, next we have a left button and a right button. So we're going to go ahead and style those to be basically the same color scheme as our buttons above. All right, so here I'm going to say the background color is going to be, we've been using this, so I'm going to go ahead and copy that from right there. And the other color is going to be, let's see, it's going to be this one right here. Okay, and let's make the font size 3em. So that's 3 times as large as the normal size font. Go ahead and save that. And let's preview it. All right, so that's pretty good, except for it looks like I have a little error right here. This one did not style right, so let me see how I type that. Oh, I put left button and I somehow must have auto completed to the wrong thing. So here I needed right button. And then let me save that. Okay, and refresh, and there it pops in. All right, so it looks like right now we've got our styles all set. So now that our styles are all set, let's finish out the project by adding the JavaScript to it. And before you do that, I'd like you to go over to Schoology, and you can now take the Part 2 video quiz.